Welcome back to the channel, C1 Advanced Exam Preparation. Today we're going to look at reports, okay? We're going to look at a question, we're going to plan our answer, okay? Then we're going to write it, okay? And then look at how it might be scored in relation to the scoring criteria, okay? So let's have a look and see what we get into. Let's get to it. So here is our report question. This is part 2 of the writing exam, okay? And in part 2, one of the questions that we might be asked to write about is a report, okay? And this is the report that we're going to look at here, okay? Let's just have a quick read through and see what it says. You have just helped organize a day of activities to welcome new students to the International College where you are a student. The principal has asked you for a report. In your report, you should briefly describe the day, comment on how effective the activities were in welcoming the new students, and make recommendations for a similar event next year. Write your report. Okay, so we know with the writing that we have from 220 to 260 words, which we have to use. Okay, I would suggest that perhaps we write slightly more than 260, maybe 280 words. Okay, and that sort of gives us a bit more room for sort of grammar, vocabulary, space to talk about different things, etc. Okay, so this is the report we're going to have a look at. Okay, and here we have a plan, okay? It's worth whatever you're doing in writing, whether you're writing the essay for part 1 or you're looking at part 2, to spend a little bit of time, of the time that you've got, and plan what's going to happen in your essay or in your report, in this case, okay? And perhaps 5 minutes might be an ideal time to sort of think about how we're going to go about writing essay, report, proposal, whatever it might be. Okay, so let's just look and see what we can think about in our plan. Okay, first of all, we should think about what we have to do, understand the task, what is being asked of us. Okay, so we know from the report that we have to do 3 things. Okay, and if you look at our question here at the top, you can see that we've been asked to talk about 3 things. You should describe the day. Okay, so that's number 1. We've got to describe the day, the activities, what happened in this welcome day for international students. Okay, we should also comment on how effective the activities were in welcoming the new students. Okay, so this is number 2. And the third point is that we need to make recommendations for a similar event next year. So these are our 3 things that we should be looking at. Okay, so what 3 things that should be needed in the report? Identify those. We've done that. We need to describe the day. We need to evaluate activities, and we should also provide recommendations. Okay. Identify the purpose of the report. Well, essentially the principal, and he or she will be important because that will be the reader of the report, wants an evaluation of the day. Okay, was it a successful day? Was it a day where the students were happy with what they saw, or perhaps were there shortcomings and perhaps we should make improvements so that next year and future years it will be a better event? So essentially we're evaluating what happened. Okay, and that the audience that we should definitely consider is the college principal. That will give us probably how formal we're going to write our report. Okay, I probably would suggest in this case, considering that we're a student writing the report for the principal, we're going to probably make it pretty formal. Okay, so let's move on to the sort of next part of our plan. And essentially what we're going to look at now is sort of brainstorm ideas. Okay, so we've identified the 3 different parts, okay, and you can see here, brainstorm our ideas. We've got here 2 minutes to think about that. Well, we're going to have to think about ideas of what happened in the day, what was included in this welcome day, okay, because we're going to have to describe these activities, okay, so we're going to have to sit down and think about, well, how was a day structured? Well, perhaps there was a campus tour. Okay, perhaps the students were taken on a tour of the campus. They were shown the different elements of the university, of the college. Okay, Perhaps there were presentations from the college staff, the lecturers. Perhaps they gave presentations on what would be included in their classes. Okay. Perhaps there was lunch with students from different years. Perhaps the other students could talk about that. Perhaps there were also activities where the students could sort of be relaxed in the sort of situation where they were. Okay, so perhaps we need to think about those because we're going to have to describe those. Okay, we should also think about how well these events happened. Were the people happy with these different activities? Okay, so was the organization successful? Were the students happy with what they saw? Okay, we should also think about this. Okay, and perhaps we should also think about things that were not so good. Okay, because it can't have been perfect. Perhaps there were some things that we could improve. Perhaps, for example, some of the teaching staff were absent, so they couldn't present to the students. Perhaps there were problems at lunch and there was people waiting a long time. So perhaps we can sort of think about that. Okay. We should also think as well about sort of the structure of the report. We know that report proposals have a particular structure, okay? And we should sort of think a little bit about that, okay? We know that we're going to have some sort of title for our report. We're going to have an introduction, okay, which will explain essentially why we're writing the report, okay? Perhaps talk about the feedback in a very general sort of terms, okay? We're going to have to describe the activity. So this will be one of our subheadings. Okay. Then we're going to have to talk about evaluation and talk about the positives and the negatives. And at the end, we're going to provide recommendations. We're going to provide improvements for the next year's welcome day. Okay. And finally, we should consider the sort of the language, the style, the tone, if you like. Okay, we've highlighted that the reader is going to be the college principal, so we should definitely sort of keep it sort of neutral, professional language and tone. Okay, it should be easy to understand. It should be sort of fairly clear in presenting the information so that the principal can see what happened. Okay. And we should structure it in such a way that, you know, the information can be easily obtained. Right. Okay. So let's get into actually writing the report. Okay. And we have our title here at the top. Okay. Welcoming Day at St. John's College. Okay. We've made up the name of the college. Okay. And we're going to start with the introduction. Okay, so this report evaluates the recent Welcome Day event organized for new students. Based on feedback collected from participants, the event was largely successful in facilitating a smooth transition into college life. However, some areas for improvement have been identified to enhance future editions. Okay, so we can see here the sort of report. We sort of outlined what's going to happen in the report. Okay, evaluation of the welcome day. Okay, we've also talked about the feedback. Okay, because we need to present the information. Okay, how do we know that the event was successful or not? Okay, well, we need to ask people and the students that participated. Obviously, those are going to be the important people. So we need that feedback. Okay, we've collected that from them. Okay, and we can see here it was largely successful. Okay, in facilitating smooth transition. So that sort of gives us the fact that, well, it was sort of 75, 80% successful, but there's room for improvement. Okay. And then we can see here, however, some areas for improvement have been identified. Okay. So we've got here our sort of general introduction. Okay, and then the next part here, we're going to describe the day's activity. So our heading here, quite simply, description of activities, okay, or description of day's activities we could have here as well, okay. A variety of activities were carefully planned to introduce students to their new environment. To begin with, the event commenced with a guided campus tour, allowing attendees to familiarize themselves with key facilities, including lecture halls, laboratories, the library, and the refectory. Following this, an informative session was conducted by teaching staff and senior students. This provided an overview of academic programs and offered practical advice on overcoming initial challenges. Notably, more than 75% of attendees regarded this segment as the most useful in preparing them for college life. A communal lunch afterwards at the refectory allowed first-year students to experience the dining facilities while socializing in a relaxed setting. In the afternoon, interactive icebreaker activities were organized to help students form connections, and ease feelings of isolation. It was particularly well received as it contributed to fostering a sense of belonging. Okay, so describing the activities we have here, we've got information about that. Okay, we've provided some information about how well some of these activities were considered by the people. Okay, and I think we've described well the different activities. Okay, let's move on to the evaluation of the event. Overall, the event was highly successful. What was particularly effective was the division of participants into smaller groups, as it promoted meaningful interactions and in-depth discussions. However, feedback from questionnaires highlighted two areas for improvement. One, the absence of some teaching staff limited students' ability to gain insights into specific courses. And two, over 50% of participants reported long waiting times for lunch, which reduced efficiency and comfort during the break. Okay, so very quickly here, we've got the information that the college principal is going to need. Okay, essentially, it was sort of successful, but we can see here that there were 2 points that we should be talking about. Okay, so the recommendations based on the evaluations, we've got here recommendations, the subheading. To further improve the Welcome Day experience, the following measures are recommended. Pre-recorded course presentations. To address the issue of unavailable lecturers, recorded sessions could be provided to ensure comprehensive information on all courses. Staggered lunch schedule. Implementing a staggered lunch schedule would help minimize long queues and improve the overall experience for students. Should these adjustments be implemented, future Welcome Day events are likely to be even more effective in supporting new students as they embark on their academic journey. So now that we have finished writing our report, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to look at how it might be scored, okay, and we're going to check the teacher's handbook for information about the scoring, okay, and look at the 4 different categories and see if we've done what is required in relation to the scoring criteria. Okay, so this is the teacher's handbook. Okay, if you don't have this for your sort of preparation, I would suggest that you get a copy. It's freely available from the Cambridge English Assessment website. Okay, there's a lot of information here, not just about the writing, but all the other aspects of the exam. I would definitely suggest that you obtain a copy. Okay, so let's go to the writing assessment part, okay, and look at the scoring, okay, and then we'll look at the scoring criteria and our report. Okay, so the first criteria we can have a look at is content, okay. Let's just have a look and see what is involved in content, okay. So is the information relevant? Okay, relevant here means it's related or relatable to required content points and or task requirements. Okay, so basically, have we in the report done what we should? Okay, we've been asked a question. Have we answered that question? Okay, and is the answer that we provided relevant? Okay, I would suggest that yes, we have done that. Okay. We provided all the information that was required. If you remember, there were 3 items that we had to talk about. Okay, we've talked about the day's activities. We've described them well. Okay, we've provided evaluation. Okay, both positively and negatively. Okay, and at the end, we've also provided recommendations so that it can be improved or the day can be improved for the next year. So I think the information we provided is certainly relevant. Then we've got the target reader. Okay, the target reader is a hypothetical reader set up in the task, magazine readership, for example, or perhaps your English teacher. Well, we know that the target reader in our report was the principal of the college, okay? And I think we've sort of communicated the information to him or her effectively, okay? We provided clear sort of details about all the different aspects. We've written in a format which is appropriate for that person, okay? So I think the reader has been considered. And then finally, that the reader has been informed, okay, that we've looked at the different content points, okay, and we've developed those points, okay. And again, I think we can say that we have developed fully each of the points. We've described completely the information that was required about the day. We've provided evaluation and information, okay, so that the reader can sort of be informed about what we're doing, what's happened, okay, and as well we provided recommendations, okay. So for content, I would suggest that we've completed what was required here, okay. Now the next part here is communicative achievement. Okay, there's quite a lot here for each different element under this, okay? Let's have a look and see what we have to look at, okay? So the first part here, convention of the communicative task include such things as genre, format, register, and function. For example, a personal letter should not be written as a formal report, should be laid out accordingly and use the right tone for the communicative purpose. So in other words, we've been asked to write a report. Have we written a report? Have we provided the format of a report? The register of a report, etc. Okay, and again, I would say that we have done that. Okay, if you look at our report, we've provided titles, we've provided subheadings, so the information can be quickly obtained. Okay. Perhaps the college principal doesn't want to read the whole report. Perhaps they just want to read certain aspects. So they can see from the subheadings where the information is that they need to sort of obtain. So if they just want to look at evaluation, they can come here quickly and find out what part was successful, what part wasn't successful, or perhaps they just want to read recommendations. Okay. Holding the target reader's attention, okay, have we done that? Okay, you can see here that it's used in a positive sense, refers to the quality of text, allows a reader to derive meaning and not be distracted. It does not refer to text that force the reader to read closely because they are difficult and to follow or make sense of. I would suggest that we've done that adequately. We provided a lot of information, provided it clearly and concisely, okay. None of what we've written is difficult to understand. Okay, it's fairly simply presented. Okay, and I would say that we've accomplished that part of communicative achievement. Then we have here right at the end this element about straightforward and complex ideas. Okay. Now, straightforward ideas are pretty much as it says, okay? Those which relate to relatively limited subject matter, usually concrete in nature, and which require simple rhetorical devices to communicate, okay? So I think we've done that in the sort of elements of sort of providing the information that was required. We've described the activities quite simply, what happened, okay? I think we've done that all the way through. We provided information about the evaluation, okay? And the other element was the complex ideas. Complex ideas are those which are more abstract in nature, which cover a wider subject area requiring more rhetorical resources to bring together and to express. So have we provided information about those? Well, we have provided information about the complex ideas. When we talk about evaluation, we go into sort of detail here, which we've developed, okay, about the problems that some of the attendees had on the day. Okay, this is the sort of element they're looking for in relation to complex information. Okay, we've developed sort of straightforward ideas into something slightly more complex. Okay, and again, with the sort of recommendations, we've done that here, developing sort of ideas based on the sort of evaluation that we've talked about here. Okay. Now, organization looks at quite a few things here. We need to look at things like linking words, cohesive devices, organizational patterns, okay? Have we done that, okay? So in a simple sense, linking words are the words that we've sort of often talked about in essays, reports, writing, okay? The sort of howevers, therefores, moreovers, okay? And I would say that we have done quite well in relation to linking words. If you want, we can look closely. Right. Okay. And so what I've done here is I've bolded the sort of elements related to organization. Okay. And specifically in relation to linking devices, cohesive devices. Okay. So these elements here in the text are directly related to the sort of flow and the connectedness of the text. Okay. So you can sort of see here how it sort of begins. Following this, notably, we talk here about the information about this particular element. Okay, again, connecting to the sort of what happens afterwards and in the afternoon. So you can sort of see here there's a sort of logical connection in time that we've described. Okay, again, we've talked about some contrasts here. We've even used bullet points. Okay, providing the information clearly. Okay, so it can be obtained without too much complex sort of reading and understanding. And again, complex points here for the recommendations. And this first conditional inversion talks about the adjustments that we've sort of could be implemented for the future and to make the day a more successful day. Okay. And finally, language here. You can see here how language is separated into different aspects. We've got vocabulary, okay? We've got the appropriacy of the vocabulary, okay? So if we're talking about a particular topic, is the vocabulary that we provided appropriate, okay? And we've also got here at the bottom, simple grammatical forms, complex forms, okay, and that the control of the grammar is consistent, accurate, okay. We've not made sort of mistakes, essentially what it's saying, okay, and that the range of the grammar, okay, is not just based on sort of simple elements, okay. We've used a lot of different forms, okay. Again, we can sort of look in a bit more detail at these sort of different elements. Okay, so what I've done here is that I've highlighted vocabulary lexis that is relevant to college, okay, university life, but also relevant to vocabulary relevant to sort of a welcome day. Okay, so for example, participants would be someone that would attend a welcome day. Okay. We've talked about attendees, which is the same sort of idea. Okay. Guided campus tour, laboratories, library, refectory. That would be sort of vocabulary related to college life, teaching staff in the same way, academic programs. Okay. Interactive icebreakers would be sort of vocabulary relevant for welcome days. And so we've sort of all the way through provided sort of that kind of vocabulary. So in relation to the language requirement for vocabulary, I think we've done what's been asked of us. Just a couple of points here in relation to grammar, okay, that we can talk about. Again, I bolded some elements here that we can sort of discuss. Here, for example, at the beginning, we've talked about information passively. Okay, so we concentrate on actions rather than people. Again, here you can see another passive sentence, which is appropriate for a report. Okay, we've got a cleft sentence here emphasizing information that's important, especially in relation to the fact that we're evaluating certain aspects. Okay, and then right at the end, we've got a sort of first conditional inversion. Okay, that again emphasizes the information that we need to discuss. Okay, so again, in grammar, I think we've covered what is being required. Right. Okay. So there we are. That is a report. We've planned the report. Okay. We've gone through the elements of a plan. We've written the report and we've looked at all that's necessary in relation to that. We've checked the report against the scoring criteria. Okay. And I would definitely suggest that if you are writing, that you should be sort of having a sort of look at sort of scoring criteria, thinking about what's required. Writing in relation to what the scorers, the examiners are looking for. Okay. So have a look through this video. Okay. There's plenty to sort of look at. Okay. Leave a comment below and I will certainly sort of get back to you. And in the future, we'll provide some more videos for you to look at. Okay. Thank you.